Hello, this is David Baumblatt from Terabith Leadership. Thanks for joining in. What are we going to be talking about today? We are going to be talking about something you're seeing before your eyes. And that is, yes, it's going to be about civil war, revolution, but you're starting to feel this sense of an energy go through America. And that is, don't pay attention to that. Anyway, you're going to start seeing that energy. What is that? It's going to take the form of violence, but you're seeing that from both the left and the right, and you're trying to figure out where this is going. I'm going to give you an example. January 6th, that was that same energy where you could say whatever. The right looked at law enforcement. We painted law enforcement in a bad picture, and we were just the freedom fighters trying to fight for our freedom. Now you're seeing it the opposite. And many people would say, yeah, but David, these are the people we're fighting against, those illegal immigrants. I've got nothing wrong. Again, if ICE sticks to their job when it comes to foreign nationals, illegals, I'll shake their hand and say thank you for your service. But the point is if you start looking at law enforcement or big government as your friend, you're going to see sooner or later, it's going to turn around and bite you. So what's the answer? Like I said, I don't think anything's going to really happen until guns and violence come into this place, which it already is. But what I'm trying to say is we're going to have a tough time figuring out who's who. I guess think about it this way. Use this example. If Donald Trump did not get elected to president, he lost. Whether he lost fair and square or he lost that because the election was rigged. And was the election rigged, the last election? Well, I'm not going to say no. I mean, it's very plausible that maybe it was rigged. Again, I'm not going to say yes or no. I don't know, but I'm not going to deny it. Maybe it was. But let's just say, what if Donald Trump didn't win? What would Donald Trump be doing? And who knows what would happen to him? Maybe he's in prison and the Democrats in charge. And you could tell where our country's going. But what would he probably say? Back the blue, follow the laws, be a peaceful protester. I mean, Donald Trump, when he was leaving office because he said the election was rigged, he instigated, and this is not bad, but he instigated his followers to protest. Of course, he would say it's a peaceful protest, and I get it. Like I said, I don't view January 6th as any national security event, but it was a protest that probably got out of hand, and like I've said what I think about that. But you got to ask yourself, where's the ebb and flow of what's going to happen? And sooner or later, and this is what's happening where Donald Trump is probably read it wrong. Because I'm telling you, those are bad shots from ICE, both the wacky woman and this nurse. And what Donald Trump, he's kind of overstepping with his administration when they're starting to say, and we'll do some clips, but to the American people, I wouldn't put your eggs in that law enforcement basket. Remember, when Donald Trump was not the president, the FBI was looked upon as crooked and corrupt. I guess now he's in office, it's not anymore. Like it changed, like boom, now the FBI's fixed. So I'd be very careful when you step, because what are we fighting for? Well, one of the things we're fighting for is faith, family, freedom. One of the freedoms is what? First Amendment, Second Amendment. So you start stepping on those. I think Donald Trump has got to realize that my number one concern is not a bunch of Somalis in Minnesota. They should be deported. I get you. But don't mess with our Christianity. Don't mess with our European heritage and people, and don't mess with our freedoms. These are like, we call them in the FBI, we call them bright lines. Not these bright lines. I mean, we would never say in the FBI, but they're called bright lines in leadership. But this is where, and what happened, even though we're focusing on the Somali fraud, they're not focusing, they deviated, and on kicking out illegal immigrants, which is great. I'm all for it. They started deviating. And what did they start doing? They started illegally shooting American citizens. I get it. Some of you say they deserve to be shot. I don't think they did. And so what did they overstep now? Now they're going with American freedoms, our Second Amendment. We're going to look at it, but like I said, that guy, and what we're going to go is take it a step farther, because you got to ask yourself, where is this going? From a leadership standpoint, think of a chess match. What are the next 3 or 4 moves ahead? We're going to go into militias. And I've said many times, I'm not an advocate of a young man joining the American globalist corporation military. If you want to get money, if you need money, it's a job. That's all it is now. It's a job. You're a government mercenary. You got to do what you got to do. But if you really want to put your military might into service, I wouldn't join the American military. I would look at joining some nationalist militia, and you are going to start seeing rise in militias. Because what did I say? Leave America, get off the grid. You better arm yourself if you're off the grid, or get involved in politics at the state level. Who's going to protect yourself? You're going to need militias. There's going to be some, like I said, a state governor with militias. But anyway, let's start watching some of these clips and know it. But either way, Donald Trump, it's evidence. Again, I called the shot on this. Donald Trump and his administration are now backpedaling on what they're looking at this nurse. I don't know what this guy's political agenda is, this nurse. He's probably a hippie liberal, maybe, maybe not. That doesn't excuse what happened, because what happened to him could happen to us. And what are they messing with? Well, they're messing with our First Amendment right to protest, or meaning freedom of speech. The Second Amendment, these are constitutional rights that if you're a U.S. citizen, if you don't protect it, you're going to lose it. So let's look at this, see what this is happening here.
A shift in tone from the Trump administration here at the White House today around his immigration operation in Minnesota. And it comes after the shooting of Alex Preddy over the weekend and the uproar that we're hearing from even those in the president's own party. So the first thing we saw today was President Trump speaking on the phone with Democratic Governor Tim Walz. Now, this is someone he has insulted time after time. He's called him a quote.
So don't fool yourself. I'm not a fan of Tim Walz, but anyway, don't fool yourself. Donald Trump never wants to say that he's had to bend the knee, but he reached out to Walz because he knows that Donald Trump is more worried about this violence overspilling than Tim Walz is. Meaning Donald Trump, his thugs, and again, I'm not a big fan of law enforcement. His ICE thugs. My message to ICE is focus on your mission, and your mission is not U.S. citizens.
Deranged lunatic, and blamed him for the unrest, saying he is inciting the insurrection. Now today, President Trump said Walz called him and said they are on a similar wavelength. He said Walz asked that they work together.
But don't fool yourself. Donald Trump didn't need to do this. Donald Trump is a power player. Donald Trump, I'm just telling to the American people here, you've got to realize this was wrong, the Trump administration. I'm not saying not to support Donald Trump. Keep going and keep being MAGA. But what happened here with these American citizens, you got to be very careful.
According to a readout from the call with the Democratic governor's office obtained by News Nation, Walz called it a, quote, productive call, and that he made the case to the president that there needs to be impartial investigations. And another thing we noticed today is President Trump saying that he's sending in his border czar, Tom Homan. Now, we know DHS Secretary Kristi Noem.
All right, we got
shooting has renewed a debate over the Second Amendment and concealed carry laws, but this time the political roles are reversed.
So we're just looking at here. Remember Kyle Rittenhouse, which I would say Kyle Rittenhouse was a good shoot. It's a good form of Second Amendment. And was he whatever he was doing, though, I would agree. You don't think there's similarities? I think there's a lot of similarities.
The right to bear arms has been a Republican Party big issue for decades. Conservative politicians have strongly defended the Second Amendment by successfully passing gun rights laws such as concealed carry in every state. Minneapolis shooting victim Alex Preddy was legally carrying a firearm.
I mean, do we not care about American citizens anymore? Like I said, I think this guy, Alex Preddy, would probably look at me as a white supremacist, as whatever. He's still American citizen, even though I know it doesn't mean less. I know it means less and less, this American citizenship, even to me. But still, man, have we forgotten all sense of Christianity or humanity? It was a bad shot. Again, that doesn't mean you still can be loyal to Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. It is, but you got to call mistakes out when they're done. This was a mistake. It was a bad shot. I feel sorry for this man and his family.
But top Trump administration officials say he did not have a right.
See, now you look there, I guess he was getting in the police way. The police were pushing. I get it. Again, whatever this guy was doing, it was probably a misdemeanor in terms of violation.
To do so.
You cannot bring a firearm.
All right, look at this guy. There's another video on him. This is our FBI director. This is it. You think you're going to go to India and become their version of the FBI director as a white man? How we allowed an Indian man to be here. This guy's corrupt, by the way. He knows about my story and he's purposely avoiding me. Why? Because I'm telling you, as a former FBI agent, these cops are scumbags. They will cover stuff up. And be careful. Today you're MAGA. Tomorrow you might not be. they're going to come for you. This system's going to fall. Let's hear what this guy has to say.
Loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
However, President Trump
Where did he get that? How educated is this guy, Kash Patel? He needs to go back to India.
supported Kyle Rittenhouse after he shot and killed two men who tried grabbing his gun during a Kenosha protest following a police-involved shooting. Some January 6 rioters were armed, and many Republicans.
And what did I go down when it came to the January 6th? What did I say? The police and the law enforcement and the FBI that were corrupt overreacted. I looked at January 6th as a protest. It got out of hand. There's no doubt about it. It got out of hand. It shouldn't have been at the extreme, though, level of sentencing or national security or terrorism. No, I'm not going to buy that. But that was a time, too. I backed the protesters.
Supported this Missouri couple who pointed their firearms at George Floyd protesters.
Absolutely. You fired it. Now, of course, it's different. I think they were on their personal property. So there's a bit of a more castle defense. But the way it is, they felt threatened. They're on their own property. That adds a different legality to it. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't have a problem with those people. I thought they got a raw deal too, this couple, when they got some legal qualms with their state government.
It's the height of hypocrisy, which continues out of the White House, scrambling to find some reason to show why these agents were justified.
Former Illinois House Republican leader Jim Durkin says the hypocrisy surrounding the Minneapolis case will continue to fracture the Republican Party. And while it took over 20...
I'm telling you, to the MAGA people, you have no clue what's going on. The same thing that Donald Trump rightly fractured the Republican Party, and he said these Republican in name only rhinos, he was right, and it fractured. But I'm telling you, a lot of you MAGA people, you don't understand the concept of nationalism. The MAGA party will split. It just is what it is. Give it time. And I like Donald Trump. He's the best president in my entire lifetime. The best is yet to come. You have not seen how bad it's going to get in America.
Years to pass a restricted concealed carry law in Illinois, residents have a right to carry a loaded firearm to a protest. Minnesota shares the same right.
Mr. Preddy was not violating the law in terms of the Second Amendment. I
don't know who this guy is. This is Rob. I see behind he's got FBI credentials, so he's obviously looks like a retired FBI. See, he's so anyway. So this guy's a former FBI agent speaking.
A constitutionally protected right, and the law in Minnesota did not prohibit him from carrying a firearm down there.
But former FBI agent Rob Chadwick, who now works for the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, says the law gets dicey if the armed person inserts themselves in a law enforcement.
I agree. I know what they're getting, but I'm looking at how much insertion. I still think this guy was protesting. Maybe he stepped out of line a little bit, but I look at it as a misdemeanor. I mean, what type of nation are we going to be? And where we've got to walk on a very tight line. And if we as citizens have to walk on a very tight line, how about our politicians? How about these corrupt corporations? How about they are held to that same standard on walking on that tight line?
Operation. USCCA and a growing number of Republicans are...
That whole thing with the gun, I'm telling you, that is a raw deal, and those cops are going to cover it up. The good thing is now that it's national news, maybe it'll be a much harder way for the cops to cover it up. But in a normal circumstance, that U.S. citizen would be dead. There would be no investigation, and that's the way it is. And those cops would have lied.
Calling for a full investigation into Preddy's death.
When you take that step and get involved physically in a law enforcement action, it is incredibly dangerous and an unintended consequence.
So remember, even in my case, I was physically assaulted by the FBI employee. That's my allegation, along with many others. And do you think the right thing by the director, Kash Patel, he knows about me, is to just ignore me? You investigate these allegations. I'm telling you, these are corrupt people. You're going to see it. I'll go to one. I'll see your comments here in a second, but let's go to this guy, Kash Patel. It's weird too. I mentioned this is in China, and this is not just China. This is basically the entire non-Western world. It's hard for me to remember sometimes life in America. It's so different because if you go to another Western country, they're simple. Once you go to a non-Western country, you change. For lack of a better word, you become radicalized, which is interesting because if I'm called white supremacist in America, which I know I will, who radicalized me? Not one white person. You ever been to China? Not many white people. So what am I saying? For this part, we're going to show a little clip again about Director Kash Patel. It's hard for me now to understand how an Indian man, a non-white man, was able to go to America, become a citizen, become a politically influencer, and then rise to be the director of the FBI, the head law enforcement, the head domestic intelligence agency. I want you to reverse that. If you're a white man in America, do you think you can immigrate to India and become a citizen? No. To become high levels in the government influence? No. And to head their the highest level of their law enforcement domestic intelligence? It will never happen. So once you see this, you're like, this is unbelievable. I don't know how this happened. Well, it's through the corporations. And trust me, I like Donald Trump, but when you're a billionaire, you're also part of that group. But let's listen to what Mr. Kash Patel has to say. I mean, this guy, it's like, how did this guy get in here? And I think he's basically a henchman of Donald Trump. You know, he does what he says, and it is what it is. Let's hear what he has to say.
Asking people to do, what I'm asking people to do is on the ground in Minnesota is, why would you bring a firearm in a situation that is so volatile right now, where so many arrests have been made, where so many people are coordinating to attack and expose their...
I don't know. Why would we let an Indian man become a citizen in America? Why would we let an Indian man be the director of FBI? You know, when you're asking why is a different question. I think the key question is, did he have a legal right? Yes or no? Once that question is yes, then should you or shouldn't you? You know, it's the same thing if you have a traffic stop with a cop. You know, there are things that you probably should do or shouldn't do. But that's different between what are you legally obligated to do or illegally. I mean, if you want to remain silent when you're talking with a police officer, that's your legal right. Should you do it? I don't know. Sometimes it could piss off the cop. Now you're in more trouble. But to answer this question, why would you? Now we're getting into the should've, could've, would've. That's not what we're interested in, Mr. FBI Director. First, did he have a legal right to go? It's the same thing with my case. You know, the FBI are like, they're like spooks and gooks here. They're just going around doing their own thing. What did I illegally do? What illegal crime did I commit? And these people come up empty-handed. Sounds like this fucking yo-yo here. And again, you have to ask yourself, yeah, I could get into, I don't want to get angry, but I'm telling you, there's a part of me when this America goes into a fucking firestorm, it's again what I told my friends, I'm going to be eating popcorn. But let's keep going to Mr. Indian Kash Patel.
Law enforcement officers. That is just not smart. It is just not going to lead to a good scenario. And so we need everybody.
What are you, my fucking father? This is something else I don't like about cops. Act like your father. You're that, where are you going? This is what you good. Hey, asshole. You're law enforcement. Focus on enforcing the law. Don't be like my father here and tell me what I should and shouldn't do, you little dick. So what are you doing here, Kash? You're being the father of America, what we should and shouldn't do. Focus on the legalities of the crime.
Everybody to tamp down, obviously on that side. What we're asking people to do, what I'm asking people to do is,
yeah, well, I'm asking you to do your fucking job, Kash. And along with many things, but when a former FBI agent says he has FBI corruption at the point and he allegates you FBI physically assaulted me along with other stuff, you investigate. That's what I would say. And if you're an American citizen with common sense and say, well, we back the blue, we back the military, well, then that should be done. Why aren't you doing that, Kash? Because you're corrupt. Send that motherfucker back to India. And I'm telling you, part of this civil war, part of it, you can believe it now or you believe it later. Part of it, there will be a racial component. It just is what it is. And if you're a white person who's never lived as a racial minority like me, you don't know what you're talking about. Once you do, you realize race is real, but it will be one of the elements. It just is what it is. Let's keep going on this, and then we're going to get to the part about militias where we're going, and I'll read some of your comments. But yeah, I'm not a big fan. Like I said, you have to realize you got Danny Boy Bongino who blocked me, unblocked me. They know, use common sense. If they don't know who I am now, then it shows the FBI is not a very elite intelligence agency. I mean, you know who I am. I got yo-yos know who I am. You're really telling me the FBI? Of course they do. We know this. So you had a guy named Kash Patel and Dan Bongino under the Trump before he gets elected say the FBI is corrupt. We're going to fix it. Well, don't you think part of fixing it would be to take the allegations of FBI corruption? you're going to see. And like I said, I have no doubt about it. If that, I don't know, Alex Preddy guy, if there wasn't so much video, and look at me, I'm doing a video on him, and it's not like I got much of a channel, but there's so much now national focus on that case. It raises the bar now of a full, thorough, justified investigation being had. But if he was just a dude on the street and that happened, no one filmed it, he'd be a dead man. Meaning, of course, he'd be a dead man, but he would be a dead man. There'd be no justice. No justice. Whatever the police, because remember, how many police were kicking the guy? 5 cops, 6 cops? They're all going to say the same statement. There's not really going to be witnesses or videos because, again, it wouldn't be at this national level. Just picture a dude on the street. That's it. Case solved. The report would be the guy had a gun, he pulled the gun, something, cop shot. It wouldn't even make it to any type of retrial or judge oversight or internal affairs. The case would be done. Especially, we're going to assume too that his parents are normal parents. His parents aren't some billionaires that'll get a team of lawyers. But what I'm trying to do is, America, as much as we look at places like China or Russia as these oligarchs, we in America are oligarchs too. That if you're just a normal citizen with normal money, and I learned this when I sued Boeing. A guy told me, he's like, you never sue Boeing. They will crush you. You sue Boeing, it's like suing the American government. And I think Americans are realizing that if you're a normal person with normal money, you don't go up against these agencies, to include the FBI. They will crush you. But yet we want to spat that we have freedom. I mean, one thing I like about China doesn't really going around saying that they have freedom of speech. I've never heard about it. I don't really see China going around saying, we are a nation of freedom of speech. It is what it is. Now, there are other things in China that you can actually talk about. It is free, like these liberal topics. But you don't talk bad about the government in China. It is what it is, but at least they sort of say it. It's known. You don't do that. We in America like say, oh, freedom of speech, we're democracy, like all this stuff. And you're starting to realize we're starting to turn more and more into like an oligarchy where the people, like Trump too, if you're a billionaire, I think you have a good chance of getting justice. But if you're not, you're done for. And it's getting worse and worse. Let me go to the next video and then I'll read your comments.
Swear, American Freedom Senior Legal Fellow, to break it all down. Amy, great to see you tonight. So first, there's a lot of aspects to this, which we're going to get into. First, let's talk about the legal aspect. Everybody thinks they know what happened from the video, but with your expertise looking at it, you say, what about what we're seeing?
I think this is a very chaotic situation. I think it's very easy for us in our quiet homes, in our office chairs, to sit there and play Monday morning quarterback with the ability to break down frame by frame, second by second what's happening, and to be like, oh, the gun was taken here, you should have known this. I think it's much harder in the scenario that those officers found themselves to actually know what was happening, to be able to perceive rightly or wrongly what was happening, and to be able to.
So the way I look at this, I get it. I forgot what the doctrine we learned in the FBI, but when a case goes to court and you're up against a law enforcement officer, the judge and the jury are instructed you have to have a lot of, I'm forgetting the legal terminology. Let me just pause this really quick and then we'll go back to it. But because I want to look from a leadership, but you cannot armchair quarterbacks like an armchair quarterback dot for dot with police because you weren't there. It's on the spot. I get that. The part though of leadership is you got to rewind it. For the same reason that you look at a U.S. citizen and say, you probably shouldn't have been there at that time or this time, even though you legally can. You also have to look at cops. What were you doing? So we have to go back. And you think I'm wrong? Look what's happened. Donald Trump basically fired whoever was running, I don't know these guys' names, whoever's running the ICE in Minnesota, and he's sending this guy Holman. So even Donald Trump is realizing that his leadership has veered. And I say again, the first thing is if you're an ICE agent and you're like, what are you doing roughing up this U.S. citizen? Well, they're getting in our way or they're protesting a little too. That's not what we do then. Then change the mission. Meaning change the mission and how you're going to apprehend the illegal aliens. There's ways to do it. But once you as ICE start getting involved with it's the same thing I said in the FBI. We don't do these patrols. We don't do, like if you ask an FBI agent, how would you respond to violent protests? I don't know. It's not what we do. I mean, there's really only two levers with the FBI. We're going to do the investigation lever, which is the bulk. That's 90% of what we do. And then we have our own version of SWAT. This is our version all the way up to HRT. But if they're deployed, it's already known that there's an armed and dangerous threat, not these protests. You don't send FBI SWAT, or, you send them to literally kidnappings, armed and dangerous, and they already know that lethal force is going to be used at a moment's notice. So this other stuff, I don't know. We're not trained for that stuff. So what is ICE doing? So this is what I'm saying. And Donald Trump knows it. He's taking a step back and he's like, whoa, what's going on? Because I'm telling you, a powder keg can come up. It's going to happen either way. And so he's probably looked at it from a leadership standpoint and said, something, what is our mission? Well, the mission of ICE is to apprehend illegal foreign nationals. I mean, they have other missions, but that's generally what we're doing. Okay, well, why are we shooting U.S. citizens? Well, those U.S. citizens were getting in our way. How were they getting in our way? Well, they were protesting. Yeah, then why are we in there? What is our tactics or strategy? We have to change it. And you're going to see a change of tactics and strategies where ICE is not going to be. And if that means that fucking Rodriguez, the illegal from Mexico, is held up in this house and he's being protected by all these liberal yo-yos, then maybe it is what it is, and come back at another time, another day. It was the same thing where this is a bad example, but it's actually a cool movie. Remember that movie from Tom Cruise? I think it was called Collateral. There's ways that he used his guns. Us at the FBI Academy were correlating, but I believe the movie was called Collateral. It's with Tom Cruise. He was wearing that suit. He had like that gray shaved hair. And who was that black guy? That other famous black guy. Anyway, I think the movie was called Collateral. So in the movie, Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise is, I guess, some type of hitman. He goes into this nightclub. And if you've seen the nightclub where he does his firearms, again, I have to admit, I learned a lot about firearms training when I was in the FBI for pistol, because most of my time in the Army was M16. It was long rifle, and it was a totally different operation. I mean, it's basically light infantry tactics in the military, where in the FBI, it's totally different, similar in that movie. So anyway, if there was a scene in where he goes into this nightclub and the police, I don't even remember who they were. I don't know if it was FBI, whatever. It was some police force that said, okay, he's in the nightclub. Let's go in and arrest him. And I think if I remember the movie correct, they went into the nightclub and it just went to shit. I mean, they were shooting here and there. And during the FBI Academy, because they pull up certain movies, sometimes it's really good educational training, whether it's counterterrorism or espionage or just tactics. And they were asking us in the room, what do you think you should have done? And people were like, well, we should have went around the back door. And the FBI instructor was like, no, you idiots. We're not going to go into a nightclub to arrest a person. There's going to be so much, I guess that's the movie called, Collateral. There's going to be so much collateral, civilians getting killed. You know where he is. You make a stakeout when he leaves it, or maybe his house. Ding, ding, ding. Many times if you're going to get arrested by the FBI, it's usually in the wee hours of the morning, 3 a.m., 5 a.m. when you're totally asleep at your home. And we've already been to your home. We know what it looks like. We know everything. But we're not going to go into a nightclub. I mean, unless this guy's like a terrorist, like he's like, I got a bomb. I'm going to go into this nightclub and kill everyone. I mean, it has to be extraordinary circumstances for the FBI to say we had to go into this raving nightclub with so many civilians to make an arrest. Just wait. He's not going anywhere. Go another day. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, someone from leadership has got to be like, listen, these illegal aliens, I mean, unless they are truly making crimes at this point in time, I mean, I get a lot of them are. I don't know, wait another day. We have time. These people are not going to escape. And if they are going to escape the country, well, that's fine. Let them leave the country. Who cares? But the point is these tactics. So that's what I'm saying about the same reason if the woman, and we won't do the whole video, but she's like, you have to look at the circumstances. The first thing I do is I reverse. What were you doing there? It's the same thing if there was an FBI with a shootout. The first thing we say is, what were you doing there? What was your mission? Why were you there? And if that doesn't add up, well, then you were kind of an idiot. So, these ICE agents on the street pushing these protesters around, like, what are you doing there first? Well, there's there's Rodriguez, the illegal from Mexico. He's I don't know, he's in the car here. We got to get him. You got to change it, man. Then let Rodriguez go. And I've said many times, at a higher picture, if the state of Minnesota is so filled with liberals that they want to live and die and give all their money to these illegals, maybe a higher leadership decision is cut off all funds to Minnesota. But that wouldn't happen. Because like I said, if that would have happened, then Minnesota would say, screw you, we're not going to pay any more federal taxes. And what's that going to happen? But it's going to go that way either way. So we'll go in. But when they talk about tactics and this and that, I would step back and be like, what are you doing here? What are you pushing around American citizens for? Focus on your job. But like I said, either way, I think it's just going to get worse and worse.
Make those split-second calls. And I think because of that, this is a situation that would really benefit from having a transparent and thorough investigation into what happened. I think that's good both for the public, the sense of trust that the public has, but also for these officers themselves, so that it's not just us playing Monday morning quarterback, but that they are able to give a full assessment of what they saw and experienced and felt in that moment. And I think it's also good for the family of Alex Preddy to know what happened.
Yes, absolutely. The Second Amendment and concealed carry are at the center of this because Alex Preddy had a legal permit to.
Yeah, we heard that. Let's go on to this guy here really quick, though.
Administration is responding to the second fatal shooting this month of an American citizen in Minneapolis at the hands of a federal agent. ABC Justice and Homeland Security reporter Luke Barr joins me now with the latest.
All right, this part, they're going to go with Fox News. You know something's wrong when the Fox News are starting to argue.
But as Secretary Noem said, no one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest, and you do not get to touch law enforcement. You do that anywhere, this FBI is going to be leading the charge to arrest those.
Did you just hear what he said? Does he ever wonder why did we allow immigration? Is this Indian man adding value to our lives? I said to many times, you want to keep a nation safe, you make the American men stronger. Who's the number one responsible for protecting? Let's finish this, but let's go back to what he said. This is the FBI director, a man from India. How did this Indian guy become so powerful? In the days of Director Hoover, like him or not, no Indians allowed, along with a lot of other people. Let's go here.
No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest, and you do not get to touch law enforcement. You do that anywhere, this FBI is going to be leading the charge to arrest those.
Yeah, and he also said that, quote,
let's go one more to this thing right here.
Deadly Border Patrol shooting is putting Minnesota gun rights in the spotlight. And tonight's good question, Jeff Wagner explains what.
Like I said, MAGA is all about the Second Amendment. I think they're starting to wake up. Meaning everyone's on the bandwagon, like good shot, and then they're thinking, wait a minute, that if you're a Second Amendment supporter, this might not be good. Not
what it takes to get a permit to carry and the rules for bringing guns to protests.
Today's story isn't one good question, but a series of them to better understand Minnesota's permit to carry law for firearms. Before we get to the data, here are the latest numbers from the state.
Right now, there are nearly 380,000 people with an active permit to carry. Last year, nearly 74,000 permits were issued. That's an increase over the previous 3 years, but far from the back-to-back record-breaking years in 2020 and 2021. Many more people have firearms at home for hunting and protection, but that type of ownership doesn't require a permit.
So what does someone need to get a permit to carry?
You must be at least 18 years old, pass a federal and state background check, pass a permit to carry course, including a live shooting exercise, and pay up to a $100 fee.
In that permit to carry course, students would learn where they can and can't carry a firearm. Public spaces like this one out here in Minneapolis would be allowed. Common areas of public buildings like City Hall would also be allowed, but there are exceptions. And for that, we go to Rob Dorr, Senior Vice President of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus.
K-12 schools and daycare centers, you need permission of the principal or the owner of the daycare center in order to carry there. You can't carry in jail facilities or state hospitals. And then you can't carry in courthouse complexes unless you've notified the sheriff.
We now want to address the deadly shooting of Alex Preddy, who investigators say had a permit to carry. In reference to this specific incident, the FBI director claimed it is illegal to carry a gun at a protest.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence.
It's an assertion Dorr says is wrong.
There's no prohibition in Minnesota statutes that says you can't carry a firearm at a protest.
We've seen on many occasions permit to carry holders with guns actively demonstrating for gun rights at the state capitol. Lastly, when a permit to carry holder interacts with law enforcement, must they declare that they're carrying a firearm? The answer.
This is pretty interesting. Like I said, there's so many laws and statutes, state law and federal law that I'm not aware of, but I'll talk about it after this video, but it's good to know. It's good to educate yourself.
Is no. Unless law enforcement asks if they're carrying, then they must answer truthfully.
But until they're asked, you're under no obligation to inform a peace officer. Interesting, though.
This is also interesting. Some of this stuff I never knew either.
Is the statute uses the term peace officer, which is defined in Minnesota statutes, does not include federal agents.
With photojournalist Jose Pascual, Jeff Wagner, WCCO News.
Okay, so we're going to go into the next part. We're going to talk about militias, but here's what I want to say. As much as I'm talking about the law, the Second Amendment, make it known, I believe that the Constitution eventually is going to become toilet paper. It just is. It's very similar how America, and many MAGA people also agree with this, that when it comes to foreign policy, there's no international law. It's might makes right. I mean, what we're doing in Venezuela is we're stealing the oil. If you're fine with that, and you're like, hey, if it makes sense to steal stuff, it's fine. What are we doing in Greenland? We're going to take it over. If you're like, listen, if we want to take stuff, we'll take it. I'm just saying, though, that same mentality, oh, that's going to happen in America. So if you're some American who thinks that's okay, but then at the same time says, but our Constitution is sacred. No one can override our Constitution. Yeah, it's a piece of paper. So I just want to make it known that I don't have faith in the Constitution. And the reason when I talk about the Bible itself is just a book, but it's God. It's faith in God, and faith in God will give you strength. So no, I don't put my eggs in a basket called the Constitution, but it brings us together. It's part of our history. It is our legal document. But once anarchy comes, it's going to come. You're going to see it. That's just a piece of paper. For the same reason, like I said, you're going to start seeing, we're going to bomb anytime there's a war. That means you committed illegal activities, from that country. What we're going to do to Iran, what we did to Afghanistan, this is all illegal, but we're stronger, they're weaker, who cares? But I'm saying when it comes to America, that same principle is going to happen. And who is going to be this stronger entity? It's not going to be a bunch of liberal yo-yos. It's not going to be a bunch of lesbians. The biggest threat that I would worry about if you're MAGA is the United States government. I just wouldn't be worried. I'm not saying I would live with these liberals. I would get to a red state and we're going to start talking about militias. Part of the thing is you build your militia. I've said this. And if the liberals in a liberal state want to build their militia, it's probably going to happen, and it is. But what I said is, do I believe that it's generally going to be the liberals fighting the conservatives? It may be the ignorant people you're forced into that situation. But really, what is the number one threat? Oh, it's going to be the federal government. The federal government, number one. And so, like I said, if you are a patriot and you have faith in these laws, this thing called the Constitution, I think you're in a world of hurt. I'd say, like I said, where would you put your faith in? Probably the Bible and your gun. Those are probably the two biggest things. Let's talk a little bit about militias, because this is where it's going. What you're going to start seeing is two things. Violence is going to come up. Because what do I keep saying? We export violence abroad and we import it. Well, not import it. Well, some ways we import it with illegal immigrants, but we're just a violent country. Our government's violent. So violence is going to come up. And two, think about it. I'm a former FBI agent and I'm saying the FBI is corrupt. That's not normal. This is not a normal thing. And I'm not some disgruntled employee. I left the FBI back in 2007. I left in 2007. I just want to be left alone. I left the country, but it doesn't work. So what you're going to see is, one, violence is going to come up. And what do I keep saying? Our systems, our justice systems, our fairness, our legality, that's gone. So when you don't have faith, especially in the legal systems anymore, violence is coming up. What is that the recipe for? Oh, it's going to be a revolution. It's going to be a revolution. It's going to come that way. So either way, and what's the best way to protect you? What's better than a gun in your hand? Being surrounded by your brothers who also have guns in their hand, because you're going to want to be you're going to want to be massed in strength, and one of them is a militia. And oh, by the way, guess who, when you form a militia, is going to be your first enemy? Do you really think it's going to be the liberal militia, or do you think it's going to be the FBI trying to infiltrate, undercover your militia? Probably more worried about the FBI. But let's talk a little bit about militias, because like I said, this is where we're going. More and more, meaning it's going to become mainstream.
Over the past year, there has been plenty of chatter about militias. They've been at both left and right-wing rallies and protests. But what do we really know about what they are and what they stand for? Fox 43's Harry Lee spent a weekend embedded with a new Pennsylvania militia group to learn about their inner workings and beliefs. She explains the history of the modern militia movement and why it's intertwined with gun rights.
Both gun rights
everything from here to here
and militia groups hinge on the Second Amendment.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
It's not surprising, then, that groups tie their existence to that sentence.
It doesn't say a well-regulated army. Militia are those private citizens who, at any given moment, leave their occupations, leave their families, leave the comforts of their home to protect those that they love.
Constitutional scholars say the true meaning of the term militia is not so clear-cut.
The idea of a well-regulated militia means a well-trained militia. So it's not the same thing as saying that we can impose regulations on the militia. But
so let me just add in this. What does that mean? And what I think a lot of people don't realize is you start forming well-regulated militias, you're on the radar from the government. And you're like, but wait a minute. I remember I was giving speeches in China about this when I was in mainland in Shanghai. I said the same thing. I was telling Chinese delegates, it doesn't matter what China does. If China, and this is an example, I'm going to get to the militias, give me time. And I said, it doesn't matter what you do as a government. If you obey all the international laws, which technically now America says we don't have any international laws, but if you continue to grow in power, just think power, you'll be considered a threat to America, and they're going to bring war on you. Now, what does that mean now to the militias? If you are an American, I don't care if you're right wing, left wing, or you're totally an atheist, I guess, down the middle. If you start building up a militia with more and more men, and you're totally apolitical, you've never said any, whatever, you know what I'm saying. You're like this total peaceful militia, but you're building and getting stronger and stronger. You are going to have the United States government down your throat. Do not underestimate that. At the end of the day, our government deals in power. We don't really deal in so much on legalities or even moralities. This is about power. So I say again, the key with the well-regulated militia is, sure, you could be with you and two other buddies, say, hey, we're going to form a militia. I don't know, it's you and 5 dudes. Are you going to be under the FBI's radar? Probably not, unless you really start making, hyperbolic talks of overthrowing the government, stuff like that. But if you're just 5 dudes who like, listen, we don't even have any social media. We just train hard. This other guy's a former Green Beret. He's teaching us tactics. And the 5 of us, we just want to get really strong to protect our community. But you're really in the shadows in terms of social media, and you've never said any statements. You're just doing it. Probably you'll be you will not be under the radar of the FBI. I could be wrong, but now picture another militia who's the same way. You are non-political, totally non-political. All you're saying is we just want to build up to protect our communities, but it's not 5 people. It's 500. That's a battalion. 500 militia men in your town or your county, and you are armed to the teeth legally. All your firearms are legal. And you are training and you're getting stronger. The same thing what I said about China, you will be under the FBI surveillance. They will send 100% FBI will send undercover in it. Why? Power. And I keep saying it. Everyone knows me. I'm not a liberal, and their ideology, it's not for me. They're not our number one enemy. To the part of, I could care less if Minnesota just floats off in the distance and let them do what they got to do. We don't pay any of our tax money to Minnesota, and Minnesota doesn't have to pay any of our tax money to me. I'm fine with it. The United States government will never allow it because they know it would be a chain effect. So I keep saying, your number one threat will be from the United States government. It's going to happen. If you think violence is bad now, look at the history of America. It's only going to increase. And I see a lot of these MAGA people now, they're like, yeah, man, it's time for us to bomb Iran, bomb the shit out of them. I don't know. I mean, bombing Iran, I never really had any problems with the Iranian people. You want to bomb them? Okay, have fun. But that celebration of dominance and violence, it's going to come domestically. And that same government is going to look at you and say the same thing. And these are just small examples, but the 2 U.S. citizens who got killed, that's just going to be a drop in the bucket. It's going to get worse. Just you're going to end up seeing it. But let's go back and finish this about the militia. So again, that's the point about the think of a strong, regulated, disciplined fighting force. That's gonna rancor a lot in the government, and the FBI will be targeted.
It does indicate that just people owning weapons and operating vigilante style is not within the intent of the Second Amendment.
To understand the true intent, we have to go back about 250 years. Colonial militias were akin to an early form of the draft. All able-bodied white men were required to serve. As the United States
I thought all able-bodied white men. Interesting.
Developed a professional army and police force, the need for militias went away. Fast forward to the 1990s, when a new militia movement was born.
The historical or statutory militia is a completely different thing from militia groups in the militia movement.
The new militias serve a different purpose, with a strong focus on protecting society from a tyrannical government.
Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty from time to time must be replenished by the blood of patriots and tyrants.
To do that, they need guns.
The militia movement is completely wrapped around the issue of firearms.
The International Small Arms Survey says the U.S. has the most civilian-held guns per resident in the world. Pennsylvania volunteer militia members believe our government wants to change that.
Our vice president said that during the campaign. They openly said that they are coming for our guns. That's a challenge.
A challenge this militia is ready to take on.
You come for me, and you threaten me.
Threaten my family. We're in death.
Shall not be infringed. What exactly does that mean? It's not even a complete sentence. Did they mean only a well-regulated militia has the right to bear arms? A few years ago, the Supreme Court said no. It means any adult who's not a felon or mentally ill can have a gun. This enrages some people on the left, especially after there's a horrible shooting.
I mean, 27 children were mowed down. Isn't that enough for us? One of our own colleagues, Gabby Gifford.
Then why doesn't your party come out against the Second Amendment?
As well, but just like the right to keep and bear arms,
they would say
preserve
guns
a free
are
society.
worse. That this was written for a time when people had muskets, and now we've got machine guns.
Rifles, pistols, and shotguns, those are what are protected by the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court said machine guns are not.
Weapons that are kind of like machine guns are protected.
Well, there's a big difference between a single pull of the trigger for each shot versus keeping the trigger down.
If it's not a militia, then why did they talk about a militia?
They didn't want a standing army. And by recognizing the right to keep and bear arms, the people at large, the law-abiding people, would have arms, and when the time came, they could be organized into militia.
You have a new book out called Gun Control in the Third Reich, Disarming the Jews and Enemies of the State. And the point is,
well-intentioned politicians in the Weimar Republic decreed registration of firearms They thought this would do something to solve violence and crime.
As politicians today say.
Right, and they warned, don't let these registration records fall into the wrong hands. That was in 1932, and in 1933, the Hitler dictatorship began to consolidate its power, and they used the gun registration records to look up social democrats, to take their guns away, and to disarm them, and in fact, against all of its opponents. And by 1938, Kristallnacht, people don't realize the focus of that was to disarm the Jewish population of Germany.
Hitler said the most foolish mistake we could possibly make would be to allow the subject races to possess arms.
And he knew how to enforce it in the countries that Nazi Germany occupied. It was the death penalty for not turning in your guns within 24 hours.
So I get it for them, but what would the founders have thought about the Second Amendment had they been alive today and seen gun stores running commercials like this?
Who says family fun time can't be family gun time?
Push it back just a little bit.
Shooting is fun, so give it a shot, America. Cheaper Than Dirt has everything you need for good times and great memories.
All right, let me go on one more here.
Is going to trigger some people. What does the phrase well-regulated militia and the Second Amendment refer to? According to the Supreme Court, it refers to private individuals organized for defense. The court noted that tyrants eliminated militias consisting of all the able-bodied men, not by banning militias, but by taking away the people's arms. Thus, the court announced the reason for the Second Amendment's existence was to prevent elimination of the militia, because the militia might be necessary to oppose an oppressive military force if the constitutional order breaks down. Do you agree or disagree with the Supreme Court on this?
All right, last one here, we're going to go.
At this point, the court was quite right. That if you look at the way the word militia was understood around the time of the framing, and actually remains a legal definition of the term, although not a common lay definition, militia meant the armed adult, at the time male citizenry, the times being what they were. And well-regulated meant basically well-functioning, well-trained. So really what they were saying is that an armed, well-functioning citizenry, well-functioning as a body that knows how to use its weapons, is necessary to the security of a free state. And that because of that, and this is a preamble that explains the rationale or part of the rationale for the right, because of that, the government shouldn't be able to disarm the people.
But
now,
was the point to defend the state or to defend your own home?
The point was both, and that is one of the things that the court, I think, correctly points out.
Alan, here's what you're overlooking. If you read things like Stephen Holbrook's The Founder's Second Amendment and the other intellectual sources, very clearly they understood self-defense against a lone criminal and self-defense against a tyrannical government as the same thing, except the latter was larger in scale. It's all self-defense all the way up, all the way down.
So what does well-regulated mean? What you're trying to do is now say that everybody who owns an individual gun has to be part of a regulated militia. They have to come to the green every day and march and
but they're not saying that,
right?
Alan. They're not saying that. They're saying, I think what you're saying, and I'm not taking sides, but I just want to bring clarity to it. I think that's a straw dog. I think they're saying that implicit in the fact that if there were a militia, that the guys have the guns in the house, and they can also defend their house, and they need to have them to use them, whether the purpose was a militia or not.
But we don't have a well-regulated militia now. We don't have any kind of militia now. So I think you're conceding that the first part of the amendment has outlived its usefulness.
Thomas,
we win at least the first half of
When I was at Harvard, I would go to the Jewish Chabad's. Alan Dershowitz, I don't know if you know, that's Alan Dershowitz. He was one of the head legal scholars at Harvard. And he would come speak at the Jewish Chabad's. And it was fine, but it was so evident that he was so pro-Israel, which is nothing wrong to be pro-Israel. But once you get people in the United States government that have a duty to serve our politicians or business, it should be America first. But it is amazing how so much Israeli first it is in America. We don't realize it. But anyway, different story, but talking about this. So what do I think about this? And I've said this all the time. I think it's a great in terms of legal scholars to study the Constitution, interpret the Constitution, kind of predict how it is. But at the end of the day, and you've seen this all the time now it's so evident with America's foreign policy. we really don't have any legal doctrine in our foreign policy, except whatever we could physically get away with, meaning power. It's a power doctrine. I think that same thing is going to be for America. In fact, I'm going to take a guess on this, and I don't want to change the subject. We're talking about militias, but think about it. Why haven't we gone into North Korea? Why haven't we gone into Russia? Because we are afraid of the nuclear threat. Our military would crush North Korea. But with that nuclear threat, we are worried. I have a feeling that if and when this golden dome comes up in America, if we even get there, where we're no longer threatened by a nuclear assault from another nation, what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to invade them. Oh, the North Korea is done. So what I'm trying to say is, think about it. If you as an American argue, why do these foreign countries like Iran, why do they need to have nuclear weapons? And you're like, that is a threat to America. Why don't you trust America? Well, you even as a US citizen don't trust your own government with weapons, meaning with gun rights. We all know that if it wasn't for gun rights in America, what would our government do to us? And think what we did. I mean, think about it. Do you think we would have done what we did to Venezuela if Venezuela was a nuclear power? I don't think so. I mean, why are we doing what we're doing in Greenland? Well, Greenland is basically empty and the European Union is weak. But what if the European Union wasn't weak? So what I'm trying to do is I go back. If you are a believer in might makes right, that's not strange. I mean, these are doctrine. There are many people from politics to business and military have a very Machiavellian view, and that is might makes right. So I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm not saying you're wrong. But I am saying is if you're going to incorporate that doctrine of might makes right, you got to be really careful. And if America adopts that, then guess what's going to happen to America? You really think that Constitution is going to save you? I mean, people have to study about Mao Zedong. He realized why he got into power. The barrel of a gun. I mean, it was real power. It doesn't matter what that law says. It doesn't matter what that Constitution says. Whoever has the guns rules. And I think that's what a lot of MAGA people might have been shaken up for with these bad shootings by ICE, because they realize that if the Second Amendment gets infringed upon, we have something much worse than a bunch of pink-haired liberals or homo dudes against us. This government will destroy you. Look at me as a former West Point graduate, former FBI. This government's so corrupt. It's amazing how cowards they are. It's going to get worse. And at the end of the day, perhaps the only thing that's going to save you is not this thing called the Constitution. It's going to be guns. But you're going to start seeing this transform. But I just want to bring this down. I'll look at some of the comments. A Jew arguing against Americans owning guns. Yeah, shocker. Yeah, one thing that China's taught me is, and China's not a free speech country. It just is not. But there are topics in China that totally are free compared to America, like Adolf Hitler and the Jews. I mean, man, the stuff that I've seen, it would shock you. Or stuff like homosexual or racism or feminism. Those topics, there's just not any legality about it. People talk how they want. I mean, I've seen places in China, I don't want to change the subject, where they'll be like, and again, there's not many foreigners in China, but if you're in Shanghai, they'll be like, no blacks allowed. Literally in the store, no blacks allowed. There's a reason why you don't see many black people in Asia. They don't care. There's no laws. So in terms of that, you listen to things that you would never listen to in America, because our speech is very regulated to these sensitive topics. But again, if you're in China and you speak bad about the government, you're screwed. But then now, even in America, if you're far right or far left, you also better be watching out how you speak against the government. But yeah, it just changed your mind. But let me look at anyone else. I see Shane, outside of guns and ammo and a lot of dead men. Yeah, I really don't see. I mean, look what Donald Trump is doing. I'm not against Donald Trump. I mean, all presidents are doing it, but he's using force. He's using force, meaning a gun, to get his way. It's almost like a ruthless corporation. Look what we're doing to Greenland, which is our ally. You don't think there's a form of intimidation? Either A, you take this deal, meaning he's giving them money, he's using the guns and the gold. You either take this deal with money or we're going to come in with guns. And that's treating our ally. It's going to come to America. You're going to see it. Without changing the story a lot, I got to do this again, but I won't tell the whole story now because we're running out of time. But either way, if you zoom out and you see where America's going, you just realize it's just going to get worse and worse. And I think the common man doesn't really care about Venezuela. The common man doesn't really care about Greenland. And the common man doesn't even care about Minnesota. You live in, you live in North Dakota and you're like, yeah, I could care less about Minnesota. And you want more and more to be left alone. Some people leave. And so you ask yourself, why are we still in this shake and bake machine? Because the corporations won't let you go. They wouldn't let me go because they don't. Because they know that any type of corporation, what is the goal of a corporation? Become a monopoly. They want to keep getting stronger and stronger. But the average citizen, if you said, something, if your life could be better if we separated from California, if we separated from Minnesota, but your life would be better. Would it really heartbreak you that the United States of 50 states would change into the United 30 states, and then those guys would be the United 20 states, whatever name would be? The average citizen, I really think, would say, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I really don't. As long as, am I going to get a better life? Am I going to have more freedom? Am I going to have more, assuming you're a European person, more European? Am I going to have more Christianity? You'd be like, yeah, I'm willing to cut my losses and say, like a divorce, bye. Who's not allowing that? There's a power. This is phase 2. It's called revolution. It's the Washington, D.C. And like I said, because Donald Trump is in charge, he worked for the corporations and he does their bidding. This is what he's doing. But if Donald Trump lost, you know what would have happened. He would be like, let's go to violence. So either way, like I said, I don't want to talk so much, but I don't have much faith in this thing called the Constitution. And I think if you do, I think it's very dangerous. I would put your faith in the gun in your hand, or even better, form a militia. You got 50 guys, living. Like I said, that's part 3 is either look to state politics, or county. But if you're surrounded by a brotherhood of militiamen, that's pretty safe. Trust yourself. Even the FBI, if we ever went in there where we thought it was a group of armed men, I think you've heard about, the Bundy standoff, we get intimidated. The FBI gets intimidated. If you're talking 10 or more armed and strong men utilizing a fighting force, you'd be amazed on how much law enforcement is intimidated, because law enforcement at the end of the day, we're bullies. We usually go for just the low-hanging fruit where the person is not aware of it. We get him when he's sleeping and it's easy. But if it's an armed group, so again, that's probably what they fear. And that would be my advice, would be step 3 is start looking at state politics, because sooner or later, the right and the left is going to realize Washington, D.C., it's over, people. And to the point of the more you hear about this fraud, waste, and abuse, what's more pathetic? The American government that's corrupt, fraud, waste, and abuse, or you who still pay your tax money, right? Meaning you say one time, man, I'm telling you right now, 100%, our government's corrupt, and I'm going to still pay my tax money. That gets sad. So sooner or later, people are going to do that. And when that starts happening, that momentum, you're going to realize this system's down. But if the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse, you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, I've talked enough. David Baumblatt from Terrabin's Leadership. I say again, don't put your faith in the Constitution. Put your faith in guns, and also put your faith in a militia. And anytime the government infringes on that right, even if they're left, like this guy, Alex Peretti, be very careful. That gun is probably the safest tool you can have that's going to guarantee the freedom for you and your family. David Baumblatt from Terrabin's Leadership, lead to victory.